Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live guest interview within Mindful Journey. We're so delighted to have you here today and appreciate your continued participation and engagement. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat function, and then we'll work to get to them on the back end of the conversation and some occurrences in real time. I'm excited to bring you our guest today, Command Sergeant Major Gretchen Evans. Many of you likely seen Gretchen's story in advance as I shared some links and had shared her bio as well. So not going to go through all of it, but CSM Evans, and forgive me in advance, it's always a mouthful. She'd given me permission last time to just call her Gretchen. So I may just reference her as Gretchen, but CSM Evans, she joins us as a retired a U.S. Army veteran of 27 years of service. She travels the country now doing motivational keynote speaking, leadership training, is the founder of Team Unbroken, which is a collection of disabled, or she has liked to call it mixed ability veterans who have come out of service and had maybe lost their identity, lost that sense of purpose. And Team Unbroken is a collection of these folks who are constantly challenging the status quo, working on unique adventures, and I'm sure she'll share some of those adventures with us today. She is a Purple Heart and Bronze Star recipient. In 2022, was honored at the ESPN ESPY Awards. Many of you are likely familiar with, as she won or received, I should say, pardon me, the Pat Tillman Award for service. Quite an inspiring story. There's about a 7.5 minute video. If you haven't seen it, I would encourage you post conversation today to look it up, as it highlights even more of Gretchen's story and her background and what it is that she's been able to do throughout her career. One last note about CSM Evans. In 2006, she was in Afghanistan, having risen to the highest rank of Command Sergeant Major, leading over 30,000 troops, I believe was the time when a mortar blast occurred and ultimately left her without the ability to hear. She'll, of course, share some of that with us today. She's got different functions and is a master lip reader now, as she has told me. But I say all this humbly to just welcome her here. She delivers with such humility, care, authenticity. I know we're all going to benefit from her story, from her words, and from her inspiration today. So thank you all for being here. And Gretchen, again, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm crazy enthused about being here today and sharing this conversation with you and anybody else who may be on this call.
Wonderful. Would you mind sharing to take us back to the beginning of your military career when you were just a young woman who was adventuring into starting before I get to that, I'm seeing some AI note taker popping up here. Gretchen, is it distracting you? Would you like me to keep this, or are you seeing it on your end, or no?
You can take it down.
Okay, let me see if I can hide it. Sorry, everyone. Okay, I think it should be good now. I was maybe
I'm
on.
going to shut a door too. Yeah. So my service dog popped in and he's fine, but he likes to, he can destroy a Zoom call if you let him. He'll be up here trying to get people to see him.
Well, maybe on the back end you can show us him. It would be, yeah, it'd be exciting to see him. Sorry about that brief disruption, but yeah, as I was beginning to ask, just I'd love to hear from your vantage point, what got you into military service, and what were the beginning years like for you when you first entered into the United States Army?
So I did a year of college after I graduated from high school, and I was financially independent. My parents were deceased. And so it was difficult, working full time, trying to keep a full caseload and, incurrence and student loans and all this. And I think at the end of the year, I thought to myself, I don't know if I can do this for 4 more years. There's got to be a better way for me to get a college education. I was raised in a very patriotic family. My dad was a World War II veteran. And so, the thought came, well, why don't I go into the military and take advantage of their GI Bill and learning a skill and also incurring an income. And I didn't really care which branch that I joined. I really just went down to the recruiting station and walked in the first door, which was the Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps recruiter, and I even remember this is 1979, looked at me, and I was a very small, petite female. And he just says, "No, I don't think so." Okay, rightfully so. So I walked next door to the United States Air Force, and I wanted to fly, but you have to be 5'4" to fly, and I'm not. So, I was beginning to think, okay, size does matter. Okay. So I went to the Navy and was just about to join the Navy because they didn't really have any kind of size requirements. But to be honest with you, and my husband's a Navy 25-year veteran, so I love the Navy. But at the time, I just couldn't bring myself to put on those white bell-bottom pants. So yeah, so I walked out of that door. Then I was actually at the last door, which was the Army, and I went in there cautiously and said, "Okay, do you have any problem with this package?" And whatever. And he goes, "No, we don't care how big you are. We just care how big your bite is." So that started, my career in the Army, and I went to basic training like everybody else. I actually loved basic training, even though our drill sergeants, like I said, back in 1979, they could still put their hands on you. And, there was some, lots of kicking, boxing you in the head or whatever, which was just part of the way that they did things back then. But it didn't bother me because it wasn't like it was brutal. It was more of, you're doing something that's dangerous and I want you to stop that, maybe a little bit of just making you understand that you're joining a fighting force, that needs to be taken seriously. This is not like other jobs. Your life could depend on your skills and others as well. And so these NCOs, when I went to basic training, they were the ones who stayed after Vietnam. So they were all combat veterans and had to serve in a very, at the time, unpopular war. And I always say they were mean as snakes, but they really taught me from the very get-go how to do things properly. And there's a reason why there's protocol on how you do things. And there's a reason why you do things from point A to point B. And it may seem like nonsense, but I'm going to tell you, I attribute that early beginning of not being allowed to take shortcuts and learning how to do things the way they're supposed to be doing and doing everything right the first time, to my success in the military. They really laid an incredible foundation for me to build my career on because, like I said, they said, "Look, we're trying to prepare you for when you go to war, not if, but when you do." And they say, "And you will, if you stay in, you will go to war, and this might save your life." And so I took that to heart. And so, and I think I benefited from it. That's just the way my military brain worked, was learn to do it right the first time, put all your ability in, don't take shortcuts, show up on time, be in the right uniform, be ready to work.
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's interesting, because I didn't ask you that question when we first connected, but to hear you, just the perseverance you had even at the early part of your career, getting turned down, it kind of, to be honest, was maybe a blind spot for me walking into recruiters' offices where they might have seen you as a petite, young female, as you put it, saying, "Hey, thanks, but no thanks." So you already had to have such a perseverance mindset and a resilience on the front end of your career even before you got fully immersed in the military. So that's interesting. Now I'm going to fast forward. We'll probably go back and forth, but I want to fast forward to the experience you had on the top of a mountain. To when we're talking about perseverance and this resiliency and war, I've got to tell you, I was moved emotionally, not quite to tears, but the first 2 minutes of that video that ESPN had done, where you were talking about how you were all on the mountaintop and you're stacking the ammo and saying, "All right, we're going to give it all that we've got." Would you mind sharing with our listeners about that experience and how that this resilience and grit was essential, not only in that experience, but post. I'm trying to connect the dots and tie it together as it relates to resilience and grit, because I think you can speak to that so eloquently. But I guess the short thing I'm trying to ask is about the experience leading to the top of that mountain in, I think, 2005, and then how resilience has been impactful in your life, particularly with that experience.
Yeah, so just to kind of give us a little starting point, we had a task force that was put together to pretty much take over this a mountain where the enemy had been hiding in the caves. And at night, they were coming down from the caves, and they were just wreaking havoc on these U.S. and allied friendly villages. Okay, taking out, uh, doing some brutal things to these people because they were loyal to the United States and our allies. So the mission was to conquer the mountain and get rid of the enemy that was on the mountain. And we came in 4 Chinook helicopters right at dawn, and everybody had a rally point. Everybody knew exactly where they were supposed to go. And like I said, we were coming in Chinooks, which is a really big, heavy bird. And so you normally don't land those, especially in a combat zone, because the closer they get to the ground, the more stuff they kick up, dirt and rocks, which gets in our equipment, it gets in our face. It can cause it. So usually they hover about 3 or 4 feet off the ground, and we jump out, and then we run to our rally point. And so we had, 3 flanks. We had a right flank, a middle flank, and a left flank. And this was like, in the military, we write these operations orders, and they're down to the second. This is what's going to happen. This is where you're supposed to be. This is the mission. This is where, this is everybody knows exactly what to do. But when we came in that morning and we started jumping out of the helicopters, and I was in the 3rd helicopter, by the time I jumped out and my feet hit the ground, all of a sudden we started receiving like machine gun fire from the front, from about 100 yards. I mean, they were just like mowing down people. And then all of a sudden from the rear, they started lobbing these mortars. Well, obviously this mission, couldn't be executed the way that we planned, because we were not anticipating this type of resistance in the very beginning. So everybody was running for their life and not for their rally point, because we were trying to get behind anything that would protect us from these incoming rounds. And so everybody scattered, and it was chaos. And there was this cacophony of noise, radios going off, helicopters. And what the helicopter pilot started doing was like getting everybody out of the helicopter, because you're a sitting target in that big helicopter. Mm-hmm. And so you're really safer on the ground than you are in that helicopter. So they were telling all the troops, jump out, jump down, jump out. And then the helicopters took off. And so instead of running, like I said, to the rally point, everybody just ran wherever they could. And then I realized about, once kind of the initial, attack kind of, took a breather there for a second, I realized that with myself and 12 other force members of the Army guys were separated from the main task force, and the enemy was between us. And just the way that it worked out, we all ran to this one, it was like a bunch of rocks where we could get behind, and everybody else had kind of run to the other side. And it just looked like, and I thought, oh my goodness, we're separated from the main task force. And so in the military, we don't rule by committee. We rule by who's in charge, and that whoever's in charge is always the ranking person. So everybody's looking around at this group of people, looking to see who's the ranking person. And I was doing the same thing as everybody else. And I realized that it was me. I was the ranking person of this little unit, if you want to call it that. And so now all eyes are on me about what we're going to do. And so I found myself in this very intense, scary, frightening position where I was in charge of these people and trying to save their lives at this point. Okay. So I went back to really, I go back to those NCOs that in my basic training, those Vietnam veterans. And one of the things that they taught us that I had not thought about, this was like 20 years ago at this point, right? I'd never thought about this and never used it before. There's a maneuver that they taught us called leapfrogging, where half of the people that you have lay down in a prone position and do what they call suppressive fire. So you put your weapon on automatic and you shoot as many rounds as you can to keep the enemy down so that the rest of the unit can move to higher ground, to a better vantage point, a place where you can find some protection. And I thought to myself, the only way we're going to get out of this being pinned down is to move. And I think leapfrogging will provide us the best chance of doing this. Now, you got to remember in the whole time I'm on the radio calling back to, the headquarters saying, this is the situation I'm in. I'm cut off from the main task force. I've got a bunch of enemy pursuing us. I've got 12 other people with me. Some of them I didn't even know. They weren't part of my unit. They were part of a unit that was coming in. And I said, can you send close air support? Can you help me in any way? And the response I was getting was negative. Now, that one of the things I always say about that is you can't take that personally. Okay. They weren't saying negative, Sergeant Major, we don't care about you and your people. What they were saying was negative, Sergeant Major, we can't send anything in right now because if we send close air support, they might shoot them down. Okay. We can't move soldiers your direction because the enemy's between you two. So right now that's a negative, and so it wasn't like saying they didn't care about us. They just said, no, okay, do what you can to get to the best place you can be to defend yourselves. So we started leapfrogging up the mountain and the enemy kept pursuing us. And I did lose 3 troops on that mountain that day, okay, as we were making our way up to the mountain. And then we got about 3/4 of the way up the mountain, and I realized I had 2 really serious problems. One, we were really low on ammunition because when you do suppressive fire, you burn a lot of bullets, okay? You're just wasting bullets just to keep them down so that you can move. And so we were blowing through our ammo like crazy. And the other problem I had was I was running out of real estate, because we were almost to the top of the mountain. And so with no hope of being helped or rescued, because throughout that morning, I would call back periodically and say, okay, here's where we are and here's our situation. Now I'm low on ammo and now I'm about to get to the top of the mountain. And there's nowhere for me to go once I get to the top of the mountain. Okay, that's it. Because to go down the mountain, they would just mow us down. Okay, so I looked at the troops and said, okay, we're going to go to the top of the mountain and that's our last stand. And we really all thought that this is it. This is absolutely our last day on earth. This is how we're going to go out. And we just kind of had that determined, I don't know, you're in the military. This is what you do. Okay. We didn't take it lightly, but we also weren't freaked out. We just said, okay, this is what we got to do. And we're going to go out fighting. So we got up to the top of the mountain. We laid down, we pulled out all the magazines out of our vest and stacked them so that they would be easier to feed into our weapon. Okay. And so we could do it fast with no anticipation that this was going to end well. And then, like I said, I heard it before I ever saw the sound of a helicopter, okay? And it was 2 Apaches and also a Chinook helicopter. And the Apaches flew all over us really close and then went down to where the enemy were as they started coming up the mountain. And they were attacking us and they took care of the enemy. And then the Chinook pilot went to the backside of the mountain and hovered there and dropped his tailgate. So while the Apaches were attacking the enemy, we were able to move down the backside of that mountain and get into that helicopter. And then the helicopters took us back to headquarters. And I will say this, there was a million things going through my head this whole time. Okay. I mean, like I didn't have one moment where I didn't have to think about how am I going to keep from all these people getting killed, and it's my responsibility. And I had to dig deep a little bit and say to myself, you're a command sergeant major, you've been in the Army 20 plus years, 27 years at that point. You've been well trained, you have the tools to do this. You just have to think it through, and you can't panic. You got to like make the best decisions that you can make under these circumstances, which were
Hmm.
none of them were great decisions because there was no good decision. The decisions were, which is the lesser evil of the decisions that I'm making? Do we stay here and, hide down, hoping somebody's going to rescue us? I just didn't see that happening. So I at
Yeah.
least wanted to give us a fighting chance to get to the top of the mountain, which was the best terrain position that we could have had to defend ourselves.
Wow. Thank you for just giving such a thorough and descriptive recount of that experience. I trust that although it may be therapeutic for you to still release that, it probably, brings about some potential memories that aren't so easy to digest, losing three of your colleagues being one, and so deeply sorry for that. I'm sure they're on your mind, if not daily, very often. Um, I'm deeply moved by that, and I admire again. I probably didn't do a good job of asking the question on the front end, so I apologize. But having heard a piece of that story, I'm so intrigued by again. I use the word resilience, but it's more than that. It's a confidence in seeing what you started through to fruition. And so many questions I want to ask you from that full experience. We could probably talk for hours, but one that is on the forefront of my mind, what did you recall, or what do you recall doing to have brought calm to your body in chaos? Because what I'm hearing from you, in spite of the fear you were having as a human being, it's natural to have uncertainty, knowing that death is maybe imminent. How did you bring calm? Did you take 20 seconds to close your eyes? I mean, I'm a naive. I don't have military background. I'm trying to put myself in your shoes and understand what you did to make decisive decisions with a calmness.
So we have, I think in the military and probably in the business world, we have this saying, you kill the closest alligator first. So it's easy to get wrapped up in, you know, an hour from now, what's going to happen or whatever. I didn't have the luxury of that. We were literally having to make decisions, by the second. And what was the paramount? What was the one thing that I needed to do was to try to save as many of the lives as I could. So if I just ignored everything else, okay, and said, I need to make sure that I can do everything I can do, that these soldiers are going to get off this mountain alive. And so every decision I had was based on that. And, and also having the confidence in myself. I had to tell myself, Gretchen, you're a sergeant major. You're at 27 years in the Army. This was not my first deployment. It wasn't my first combat deployment. This was the first time I'd been in this particular situation. But the Army trains you well, okay? And you don't get to be a command sergeant major unless you've already demonstrated that you have some leadership qualities. What I had to say to myself that day is that it's you are in this position. You are the decision maker, okay? So make the decision, and you want to try to save these people. So make decisions based on that, and not to try to get too far ahead of myself and try to problem solve for things that I didn't know that were going to occur. So I think it's like in being in a moment like that, when you have a problem that's that intense, you can't committee it out. You can't, you have to it's now or never. Okay.
Yeah.
And, we've been trained to make those kind of decisions. Sometimes you are the leader that's on the ground. Okay. And no decision is not a decision. And they were relying on me. And so I had to also convey confidence in them, because we were all scared. Okay. And if I started showing the weakness that I didn't know what I was doing, or that I was too afraid to make decisions, or if I was going to shut down mentally and emotionally, they would have lost hope as well. And so that's part of the leadership thing in the military too, is that you have to instill in your troops that you are worthy of them following you, that you have their best interest at heart, that every decision I'm making based on the fact that I care for you and I want to get you off this mountain. And, other than that, I don't care about anything else. I don't care how I'm going to be judged afterwards. I don't care about the after action report. I don't care about Monday night quarterbacking, okay, about these decisions. I'm the person that's here right now making these decisions. And these are the decisions that I'm making and I'm going to make the best I can for everybody that's involved, that on the
Yes.
ground. Couldn't worry about what they're going to say back at the headquarters. Okay. I didn't care about that. Okay. You can sit there and digest all the decisions I made all day long, but I'm the one on the ground.
Hmm. That's a powerful lesson for all of us. And we serve a wide range of folks. A lot of listeners will be on Mindful Journey, I'm sure. And I'd love to hear from your perspective some of the key attributes that you think are essential for effective leaders. Because even if someone isn't on here today who's a military veteran or in the military currently, but they're a leader of a small team of five in an accounting firm or a leader of technically no one on paper, I believe we all still lead in some capacity. So, Command Sergeant Major, what are you, from your experiences, what do you believe are some of the um, non-negotiable characteristics that people must possess to be effective leaders?
So I think for me, it came down to and the things that I learned. When I saw a good leader, I would look at the things that they did and how they made decisions and how they treated people, and I would emulate that. And then when I ran across a bad leader, I would say to myself, I will never be like that. So you kind of weed out the thing. I think everybody does the same thing. I said, if I ever, I was a slick sleeve private when I came into the Army, not, one stripe. And I thought to myself, as I progress through there, if I ever make it to the position where I'm in charge of people, I'm going to treat them like I wanted to be treated when I was a private or when I was a corporal or when I was a sergeant. So it goes back to everybody that was with me raised their hand to defend the United States against foreign and domestic. They were already putting their lives on the line, just being on that mission. And to me, that spoke volumes. And so if you're the leader, I'm supposed to take care of these people. And it doesn't matter. I can't, like I said, I'd always tell everybody what people think about me is not my business.
Yes.
Okay. So, like I said, you really have to separate yourself with wanting to be popular, wanting to be liked, wanting to be, seen as a cool, whatever kind of person. You really have to kind of get through all that muck and just say, just be a good leader. That will speak for itself. And I always thought people don't care what you say until they know that you care.
Mhm.
So my thing is, I care about these troops. So, my say your actions speak so much more than any words you could possibly say. Okay, just the way that you talk to them on a day-to-day basis, that you don't talk down to them if you're in the position of leadership, that you treat them like human beings, that their feelings are important. And also when you're making decisions, no one decision is going to please everybody. It's just not, it's impossible. Okay, to make a decision and everybody say, well, wow, that because there's always going to be people who are going to be not as happy with that decision as it needs. But you make the decision based on what's best for the common good.
Mhm.
This decision will help 95% of the people, and the other 5% are not going to be happy with it. Well, if you start compromising that or trying to water it down, you're going to end up with a 50-50 kind of decision. And that's no
Yes.
good either. Okay. So my thing is, okay, I can't please everybody. So let's make the best decision. It's really not even about pleasing. You're making a decision that you think it has their best interest at heart. And if you're the wise one, the one that's been around forever and you've got all this training, then you got to trust your gut and say, I think this is the best decision for all of us. And I know that some of you might disagree, but this is the way we're going to go. And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to admit it. And then we'll
Yes.
change course. Okay. This is not
Yes.
forever. Not every decision is in stone. Okay. Like I said, you can change a decision very easily and simply say, you know what? That didn't work. I thought it was. It didn't. We're going to change directions and not be afraid to do that. That's not a sign of failure. That's a sign of you being self-aware and not afraid to admit that you don't have all the answers to everything.
Yes. Oh, I love that you said that. Two things that I pulled out of there. One, you mentioned that people really don't care how much you know until they know that you care. I think that's beautiful and can't be overstated and so true. And then secondarily, super powerful to hear you say the admittance of knowing that you don't know everything is okay. That vulnerability actually isn't weakness. To hear that from you, Command Sergeant Major, somebody who society may point to as the strongest, right? You are a Purple Heart recipient, a Bronze Star recipient, stood on stage at the ESPYs receiving the Pat Tillman Award for service. Your whole life, you're constantly hearing how courageous and strong you are, I'm sure, and you are, but you're also telling us that strength doesn't mean you have to be on top of the mountain firing at the enemy. Sometimes strength can be just vulnerable, right? And saying, I don't know all the answers. Sometimes I think our society looks to that as weakness, but to hear from you that you are somebody who is, again, from my vantage point, the epitome of a strong leader, yet you are telling us that many times in your career, you've said, hey, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm going to make decisive decision today, but I'll admit, am I hearing that correctly? Okay. I just wanted to, and would you mind sharing and elaborating as to how how you navigate when you are wrong to not lose the trust of your team?
Yeah, just own it. Okay. Don't try to sidestep it. Don't try to like give excuses of whatever. You can explain why you made the decision in the first place, but that should have come up front anyways. So when the decision is made, you don't make it, in a closed room. You make a decision and then you put it out that this is a decision, this is the way we're going to go. And then the minute that you realize, the minute that you realize that this is not working, okay, then you halt and you pivot. And like I said, we call it frago in the military, fragmentary order. That means we had an order we were following, and all of a sudden, the situation changed, which is the way the world is in the military and in civilian life. Okay, you think you got all the information, you think you have all the facts, you think whatever, but there's always what we call the X factor. And just like on that day that we went to the mountain, we did not anticipate receiving that ambush like we did. And so that changed everything. That operations orders that we spent a week writing all of a sudden became obsolete. There wasn't one thing in there that we could continue with because everything had changed. And so that's okay because that's life. Okay. And so just not being afraid to pivot, going in there and say, hey guys, I was wrong. Okay. Or I didn't anticipate that this was going to happen, or I didn't know about this for whatever reason. This wasn't on my radar. So I'm going to pivot and we're going to go down, a different way and see if this works. So, like I said, when you make a decision, it's not like the Ten Commandments. It's not, etched in stone. You can back up on your decision and say, I have better information and better intel now. Now I can make a more informed decision because something I didn't know when I made the first decision, now I know. And I'm not afraid of it. So my thing is, I'm not afraid of failure. I'm afraid of regret. Okay, I'm afraid that if I don't do the right thing, and if I don't come clean and say, look, this is what happened, that won't be able to go to sleep at night or look myself in the mirror because I'm holding this secret because I'm afraid people are going to judge me on a decision that I made. That's nonsense. They're going to judge you anyways.
That's so true.
I'm telling you. So I go back to that. Other people's opinion of me are not my business.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. There's a difference between your reputation and your character. Reputation is what other people think about you. Your character is who you are. That's what I care about, is my character. Okay. Because people are always, you always got, you always have the haters. You always got the naysayers, no matter where you are or what you're doing. Okay. Literally, you could be painting a curve and you're going to have critics. Okay. They're going to tell you there's a better way to do it or you're not doing it right. I can't be bothered with that. It's an oxygen thief. It takes time to worry about that stuff. Okay. I'm worried about whether or not I'm fulfilling the duties that were assigned to me to the best of my ability. And that is taking care of soldiers.
Yes, 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 yes. So good, so good. I love that. So inspiring. Gretchen, I'd like to there's a comment that came in. It should come up on your side too. I happy Carlos, he and I have not formally met. We just actually engaged through email, but he's been to a lot of these calls. He's got military background, and he's currently, I believe, Carlos, forgive me if I'm mistaken, but a detective with the police department in Florida. But he says, my most sincere respect and admiration for you, Sergeant Major. What an incredible story. Leadership matters in every situation, and your story reflects true leadership. And he said, from one veteran to another, thank you. So thank you. I don't know if it's showing up for you,
Yeah, so thank you,
Gretchen. Okay.
Carlos, and thank you for your service, both in the military and what you're doing as a first responder. We need people like you, and thank you for the kind words. And I wish you the best in everything that you're doing. And thanks for being on the call today. It's the words that mean the most to me, or is when a fellow soldier says, and you can call me Gretchen, but most of my friends, even my friends, hardly ever call me Gretchen. They call me Sergeant Major. It's a term of endearment. Okay, so a sergeant major is supposed to be the caretaker, the advocate for soldiers. So it's a term of endearment. So the best words that can ever be said to me is that Sergeant Major, you make me feel safe, or you make me feel I'm proud that you're my Sergeant Major, and I feel like you're going to take care of us. And those are what makes my heart sing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That brings back to the humanity, just I think sometimes in our world today, especially with social media, I laugh because you said you could paint a curb and people will judge you. And I think social media has sadly magnified judgment in many ways. It's such a good tool, it's such a value add, but on the negative, I think we forget the humanity that is the commonality amongst all of us. No matter if you're a command sergeant major, a major league baseball player, a in politics, and whatever your profession may be, we all want to feel good, and we all love kindness. And I'm grateful for you sharing that. What brings you warmth is knowing that people appreciate the kindness that you display to them. I think we can all benefit from more of that, and giving one another grace.
Absolutely. Carlos could have said a million other things. He could have said, but he chose to say something kind. And so I always, and social media gives you the platform where you can say really awful things because you're not saying it directly to that person, okay? Because you're have this safety of not having to confront them face to face. And so I think it gives this audacious right that people feel, or you could just type anything you want on social media. And I always say that words don't just disintegrate when you say them. They fall somewhere, and they fall on people's hearts, and they fall on people's souls, and they fall on people's ambitions, and they fall all kinds of things. And words can be as hurtful as any bullet wound you could ever get.
Yes.
I will say this, there's things that people have said and done to me that hurt far worse than me getting blown to smithereens in Afghanistan, that I still, feel the pain from these hurtful words, than even more so than physical pain. So I always tell everybody, if you can say something nice, or I don't know, maybe it's a Bambi thing that where you say, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. I mean, really, why would you say anything unkind to someone? And even if you're disagreeing with them, you can be kind about it. And why don't have this common courtesy anymore? Social media scares the daylights out of me. Really, it does. Okay, I grew up in a world where this is one that wasn't the way we dealt with people. You went to them, you sat down with them and said, I have a problem, or we have a problem. Can we work this out? And you find things that bring you together, not things that bring you apart. You look for commonalities and not things that are just, divisive. And it seems
Yes.
like we just kind of lost a little bit of that. So anyway, Carlos, you made my day today. Thank you.
Oh, that's amazing. Command Sergeant Major, speaking of your experience in Afghanistan, because I did not bring up that part of your story yet, is the mortar blast. I know you say it, and I don't want to misspeak. Talking about the intentionality of words, I don't want to misspeak on. I heard you say before, being blown up, but I want to be cognizant not to to share that it is inaccurate. So please forgive me and correct me if I'm saying something wrong. But when that mortar blast had occurred, walk us through that experience. To your level of comfort, of course. What transpired, and then more importantly, afterwards, being unable to hear the words of your death, but seeing the words. I think that will be powerful for our listeners. What was going on in your headspace at that time? What led up to the mortar blast? What occurred the day of, and then the following, to your level of comfort.
Yeah. So what was happening at this particular time in this deployment was we were coming towards the end when I was going to start sending troops home. So you don't just pack up 30,000 people and start send them all home on the same day. It's a process. So you start sending plane loads home as the unit who's coming in to take over the command. They start bringing theirs in. We call it right seating. Just like if you're teaching somebody how to drive, you don't put them behind the wheel first. You put them in the right seat and you show them the lay of the land and you introduce the people that they need to know. And you kind of say, here's where our problems are. And this is the people, this is something you need to be aware of. So the new unit was coming in and I was starting to send troops home. But that part of the deployment can be the most dangerous because the closer we get to the day that people get to go home, they start losing their edge a little bit. Okay. And it's a natural thing. I've done it myself. Okay. You start counting down the days, and I see these calendars popping up on the sides of tents and all kinds of things with lines drawn through days. They're counting the days until what? Till they can go home. Because the whole reason we're fighting in the first place is so that we have a home to go to. So you want to go home. And so I decided that day that I was going to go out to one of our really remote forward operating bases. These guys were at the tip of the spear. They were right on the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan, and they had been like mortared almost every night that they've been in country. And I said, I'm going to go out. I'm going to talk to those guys and gals that are on the ground and just give them a little bit of a morale pep talk. And so I flew out there in a helicopter and hopped out of the helicopter, and the troops were all coming out to a little tiny outpost, if you will. And I was just talking to them. I was saying, look, guys, we're almost home. Okay. I need you to keep your head on a swivel. We're still in a very dangerous place. And until you get on that bird, that freedom bird that's taking you home, I need you to be very vigilant. And I had just gotten those words out of my mouth when rockets started coming in. And they were coming in like rain. They were peppering us. I mean, it was like rainfall. So there's nothing you can do when you're there in this tiny compound from somebody who's rocketing you from miles away. So you send out a quick reaction force, up armored Humvees with Mark 19s, and you go out and they go to find out whoever it is, and they take care of that. You also call in close air support. But in the meantime, until those rockets stop, everybody else is supposed to get into the bunkers. And they're igloo shaped and made out of concrete, and they're reinforced with sandbags. And so I was yelling to the troops, get in the bunkers, get in the bunkers, when a round landed to my right. And again, it was all this noise, rockets, people yelling, radios going off, all kinds of this kind of crazy amount of noise. And I heard that round hit. And my brain, you know, just how fast your brain can process information. Okay. From the minute that round hit, I knew I had about 5 airborne seconds before it was going to detonate. And my brain was able to process and say, that round is too close, Gretchen. This is not going to be pretty. And then when it did detonate, all that force and all that shrapnel and all that dirt and all that earth came and just, you know, took this big force. And so the eyewitnesses told me that that blast threw me horizontal through the air. And then I hit one of those bunkers head first. And so even though I had a Kevlar on, that was a pretty severe impact. And then I got medevac to Bagram, and then from Bagram I went to Landstuhl, and they put me in a medically induced coma for a couple of days just to do an evaluation of all the injuries. And then the day that they woke me up, the young doctor was standing next to my bed, a young Army doctor, and he had a dry erase board. And he started writing on it, and he waved his hand in front of my face to kind of get my attention. And he flipped the board, and he'd written the words, "Your death." And I knew that he needed to tell me that, maybe not right at that moment, but I thought he has to tell me I'm deaf because he's not going to be able to communicate with me. So he's telling me right now that this is the first hurdle that we have to get over, is that now you were a hearing person 5 days ago, and now you're a totally deaf person. And we have to figure out how we're going to communicate. So when I took the dry erase board from him and I wiped it off with my hand, I wrote the word forever because I thought maybe I'm just temporarily deaf. You know how it is when you get a really loud sound, you get what we call a dead ear. Okay. And it happens all the time in the military. An engine from an aircraft or a rocket or something in your eardrums just can't absorb that sound. So they kind of go dead. And I wrote the word forever and I showed it to him and he nodded his head. So that very second, I knew my military career was over because I personally had discharged people who had been severely injured. Because as wonderful as the military is, if you have injuries that are so severe that you're non-deployable and you can't do your job, you can't stay. So I was wise enough to know that you cannot be deaf and be in the Army. Okay, that's a key factor. And so the first thing I had to process was my career is over. And I didn't care about all the other injuries. I was hooked up to so many machines and had all kinds of stitches all over me. And I was telling you, I didn't even care. I did look down to see if I had arms and legs. And yes, I did. Okay. But I thought, okay, I don't even care about that stuff. That's so secondary to me right now. What I care about is I've just lost my passion and purpose in life. I'm no longer going to be on active duty. They're going to discharge me, retire me as soon as they can, and they're going to send me to Walter Reed. I knew the process. And so that was what almost broke my heart. Not the injuries, not any of that stuff. It was losing the love of being in service to my country and being part of something bigger than myself. And that was the biggest hurdle for me throughout my recovery process.
Mm. How did you find that again? What did you do to bring about this passion? Because the first time I talked with you, and of course I've seen snippets of your work online, you speak with a sincere passion. I'm sure you still have tough days, we all do, but it's not lost on me that you've been able to recreate yourself in a way that I think we all could benefit from what you've done to do that, because there are people today, I want to bring this back to humanity, people today who may be going through divorce, who may be going through illness, who may be going through bankruptcy, who don't know how to recreate themselves to show up in the world with this passion and enthusiasm. Yet, Gretchen, you've undoubtedly, from my vantage point, done that. How did you reclaim your identity to get that passion back in life?
So, I'd be lying to say it was an easy process because it wasn't. So the first, thing was I was pissed as hell. Okay. I mean, really just angry that it's happened to me. Okay. You never think it's going to happen to you. Okay. So I was just angry. Okay. Even though I knew there was nothing I could do about it, I was angry. And then you get sad. And then you get frustrated because you're not the same person you were before what happened. I've been a hearing person for 46 years, and all of a sudden now I'm a deaf person. Okay. It messed up my face, and I'm not a vain woman, but no woman likes to get hit in the face with a piece of shrapnel that rearranges their face. Okay. So now I had to look in the mirror at a person that looked unfamiliar to me and just wondering, okay, really the face, you couldn't hit, the biggest piece of shrapnel couldn't, hit someplace that wasn't quite so obvious. So it's all these emotions. And then one day, actually, through a series of events, and it was a process. Okay. First, I just had to get healthy. I had to trust the doctors, even though I didn't want to be there. And even though I was a hospital patient in the beginning, I was. Okay. Because I was mad. And they all knew that because everybody at Walter Reed was mad that they were there. Nobody wanted that to happen. It wasn't like we hurt ourselves. We got hurt by somebody else. And that's just a shock. Okay. You're just thinking, it was a normal day to me. I was going out talking to troops and all of a sudden my whole life changed. Mm. And all you do is you can ruminate on that for a long time until finally one day I just said to myself, okay, Gretchen, You've been dealt a new hand. Maybe you had four kings and an ace before, and now you got threes and fives. I don't know. Okay. But it's still a hand. And so this is the hand you have to play. And you can sit here and deny that it's any different than it is, or you can move forward. And then I kind of had an epiphany. It was like this. Okay, the rocket took my hearing, took part of my face, made my brain not work as good as it used to. It rearranged bones in my body. But you know what that rocket didn't touch? It didn't touch my heart or my soul or the person that I was before I got blown up. It didn't touch that. So I had to remind myself of who I was before I got injured. And I was a nice and kind person. I was good at what I did. I cared about people. I wanted to give back to the world. I wanted to leave a legacy that people would remember me by, that brought good thoughts to their things. And so I said to myself, just be Gretchen before you got blown up. And so what I came up with was kind of this analogy that what happened to me doesn't define who I am or what I can accomplish. It's just something that happened to me. Okay. It's not a label that I have to wear. Okay. That I'm a disabled person or that I'm a blown up person or whatever. Okay. I don't even think like that anymore. I don't even give it a thought on any given day about how things change. It is what it is now. So the mind frame had to be, it was this and now it's this. And so I think it was Don Shula for the Miami Dolphins back in the day, and this just dates me, but I remember him saying that when his football team has a loss or a victory, he gives them 24 hours, either grieve the loss or celebrate their victory, and then it's back to business. So I said, enough grieving. Now we have to get back to business. And what is it that you want to be? Well, I wanted to be a sergeant major. So just be that in the civilian world, Gretchen. Be a sergeant major in the civilian world, which means what? Taking care of people and help people living their best life. That's what I did. I trained troops. I taught them how to do things that they needed to do. I took care of them. I gave them resources that they knew. I mentored them. So I just started doing that exactly like I did in the military. I just wasn't using a uniform. And then physical fitness was always important to me. And that's when I founded Team Unbroken.
Mhm. What is Team Unbroken?
Team Unbroken. So many things I could say about Team Unbroken, but Team Unbroken is an adaptive athletic team that I put together to initially compete in the world's toughest race in Fiji. And we were the first fully adaptive team that ever competed in this arduous race. And it took a fight just to get me into this race with my guys, okay, because they looked at us. And these were for elite athletes. It makes, the toughest world toughest race makes an Ironman look like a church picnic. It's 10 days of crazy, arduous things. And so I had to fight and convince Mark Burnett and the race director and Bear Grylls that, again, and I use this as a term, I said to them, I said, what's happened to us doesn't define who we are or what we can accomplish. I'm asking for you to open a door that's closed and put us on the same playing field with everybody else. And if we wash out on the first day, then that's on us. But if you say no, you just said no to a whole population of people who simply want to be treated the same as everybody else. Don't look at me like I'm broken. Don't look at me like I'm less than because I have injuries. Just look at me as the person that I am, and I might surprise you. And so they said yes. And then we went, and you can still watch it on Amazon Prime, World's Toughest Race. And then we had such a great impact on people of we call mixed ability people from that being on that show that, Mark sent us an email and says, I want you guys to keep telling your story and I want you to keep doing things because you're changing people's lives, which is what we wanted to do. Because everybody gets kicked to the curb in life, everybody.
Yeah.
And so what you have to do, we wanted to be an example that when you get kicked to the curb, you don't have to stay there.
Yes. Oh, so true and so, so powerful. I love that you bring up the mixed ability verbiage because that's very intentional. I think it's very, very powerful as well. I think I have a little bit of an understanding of why you're doing that, but probably don't have the full understanding. And for our listeners who may not have heard that term from you before, why choose that, Gretchen? Why is it mixed ability and not disabled? What was the intentionality behind that?
The intention of that was that everybody in my team has had a life altering injury, illness, or trauma that's happened to them. And because of that, well, for me, I'm the perfect example. So I became deaf at 46, and then I learned how to lip read. So I lost the ability to hear, but I added an ability to be able to lip read. So I'm not disabled, I'm mixed ability, which means I've maybe lost some of my original abilities, but for every one that I lost, I've added one. So we don't feel like we're disabled. We feel like that we have a mixture of abilities. And so we don't identify as disabled people. We're mixed ability people.
Oh, I love that. So it goes back to what you said maybe 20 minutes ago for guests who may have just jumped on. You know, there is a power in words, and you made mention to us that some of the words that you have heard throughout your life have been more painful than some of the physical pain that you've endured. And if we're not mindful of the self-talk that we have going on and what it is that we're saying to others, we risk believing and adopting a story that limits us. And I think your story is a perfect example of how words do impact. So I don't have a question on the back end of this, Command Sergeant Major. I just wanted to thank you for not being defined by that which you've gone through, and encouraging and inspiring all of us to not be defined by what we're going through. Because I know I've been guilty of, a narrative of self-talk that, imposter syndrome is very real. I interview a lot of business leaders, and well, we're trying to bring vulnerability to the marketplace and to the world, and hear from people what they've gone through, because we all face it. So thank you for that. There was another comment that had come in I'd like to read, and I want to be mindful of your time, because I think I promised you an hour. Are you still good for a few more minutes?
I'm good.
Okay, great. So Robbie says, first, thank you for your service. As someone who comes from a family full of military veterans and currently works with police and fire in Charlotte, I've seen leadership up close, and your story is a true testament to someone who puts others first. So I should be on the screen for you, but Robbie is actually a friend of mine, so I know Robbie personally. He works and Robbie, forgive me if I'm misspeaking, but works with the fire and police, as he mentioned, in the Charlotte area. So although not I don't believe he served in the military, has certainly a servant's heart and desire to be there. So I just wanted you to hear that comment from someone else you're impacting here.
Great. Thank you, Robbie, for your kind words, and thanks for what you're doing in your day-to-day life. And thanks for being on the call today and contributing your thoughts. I really appreciate it.
Gretchen, for someone listening today, we've obviously got so much from you, so many impactful words, so many raw and real and vulnerable stories. But someone listening today who might be in a tough spot in their own life, who some of the military verbiage and stories that you may have shared, perhaps couldn't fully connect with them because they don't have that background, yet they're in a tough place and they're inspired from your words, but are still having a tough time in that divorce that they might be going through, that identity crisis they might be having. What's your message to someone who might be at their wits' end in life?
I would say, never give up. Okay. You can, and don't get stalled. So, like people, it's like an intersection in a car. So either you don't enter it or go through it, but don't stay in the middle of it. It's dangerous there. And so people do that with their lives. They literally cross a life intersection and then they get stuck there. And then it's dangerous to stay there. So, and like I said, don't be afraid just to move forward or even to go back if you need to go back, but don't get stuck. And then I always, this was the thing that changed my life is, who was I and what was I before whatever happened to me happened? Because people, like I said, that can be a defining moment in your life. And you can be stuck by saying, I'm a divorcee, or I'm unemployed, or I'm disabled, or whatever word you want to put in there. That's not who you are. That's something that's happened to you. Who you are is who you decide to be. And what happened to you doesn't get to dictate who you want to be or who you are. It's just another thing in life that you have to encounter. And so don't let it be the thing that identifies you. Like, don't walk around like us, with a hat that says divorced, divorcee, or disabled, or whatever. Okay. No, don't let that be. Be who you are. Okay. You're a loving, kind person. I'm a struggling, loving, kind person. Every day can be a challenge, but you still can be a kind, loving person. So identify, write it down on a piece of paper. If you have to do it every day, do it every day, because I did it for a while. Who am I? Am I blown up Gretchen? Am I disabled Gretchen? No, that's not who I am. That's what happened to me. Who I am is totally different. Who I am is a kind, caring person who hopes the best for other people and want to be a part of something bigger than myself.
Amazing. So well said. To bring it to a little bit, I know have gone so deep, and I love that about you. You're willing to talk about the things that others may be unwilling, but to bring it maybe to a lighter note, help us learn a little bit more about Gretchen today. What's a habit, a routine, or something that you rely on to help you stay active? I know you were running for a long period. I think in that video I'd watched, you mentioned you had to alter that, but what's something that the everyday person may not know about you, and or a habit, ritual, or routine that you rely on to keep you excited about life?
Yeah. So what keeps me excited about life is engaging with other people, just like yourself. I'm not a spectator of life. I'm a participant. What I'm doing right now, I'm still running. Team Unbroken just ran the New York City Marathon in early November. We climbed Kilimanjaro in July. What we have coming up is the Cowtown Marathon in Texas. And then we're doing the London, the Dublin, and the Chicago Marathon. And in between there, we got some other things going on. I want to learn how to burro race where you run with a donkey. That's on my list to do. So I guess what my habit is that, I do have a plan for the day, because I feel like if I don't plan my day, somebody else will, and I might not like it. So I do have like some bullet points of things that I would like to accomplish. Now, I don't beat up myself if I don't get them all done, because like I said, we have to pivot sometimes because unexpected things happen. But I feel like if I just wake up and just kind of wing it, then I'm not going to get anything done. Then I'm kind of at the mercy of whatever that day, whichever way the wind's blowing that day. And I don't like that feeling. So I need to accomplish something. And then, I check in with the people who mean the most to me. Team Unbroken, even if it's a quick email or a silly meme or something like that. These people are important to me, my family members. The coolest thing that's happened to me most recently is that I'm a grandmother.
Oh,
So I have a
exciting.
grandson, yes, and I'm like
Congratulations.
stupid about him. I'm stupid about this baby boy. My daughter says, "You are the worst grandmother in the world." Says you are, and the fact that I'm over, like I want to know everything about him. I want to FaceTime with him. He's 18 months old. And I said, "Let me FaceTime with Grayson." She goes, "He's 18 months old, Mom. He doesn't even talk." I said, "I still want to see him." Okay. So this is like, I don't know how people who are grandparents will get this, but if you're not a grandparent yet, it's a different kind of love from a different part of your heart that I never knew existed until this baby was born. I don't know how to explain it any other way, that it activates a part of your heart, I think, that is dormant until you have your first grandchild.
Wow.
And so I'm just like, I'm stupid about him. Okay. And my daughter just has to like give me the stiff arm every once in a while and say, "Don't be that kind of helicopter grandmother." Okay. That's what I've become. And I wasn't a helicopter parent, so it makes me laugh. So I didn't know that about myself. I didn't think becoming a grandparent up until the day he was born. I thought, okay, whatever. Okay. I mean, I'm glad we had a baby in the family. I'm all excited, but I didn't think I'd be stupid.
Yeah. I love that you're sharing that. I can't relate at this juncture in my life. I have been able to see my parents have they've got two grandkids. I don't have kids. My brother's got two kids, and it's funny because I hear how they, spoil the kids and want to be around the
Yes.
kids. So although I don't have firsthand knowledge of lived experience, I see it and
You've
hear it,
seen it
and
in action.
yeah,
You've seen
yes,
stupid
yes,
grandparents, and I use the word stupid, but you know what I mean. We're like just like bedazzled by these little creatures. Okay, I mean
sure.
bedazzled is a great. I don't know that's a real word, but that's what I feel when I see him. I'm thinking like, okay, this is like magic. This is like
That's
pure happiness seeing this
yeah.
little man.
Yeah, amazing. It makes me think, and I'll pause. This will be our last question, unless other guests have anything, because again, want to be respectful of your time. But you brought up something that triggered a thought with me of learn what kind of you didn't say it this way, forgive me, but kind of learning something new, being open. I think you mentioned I didn't know that it was going to be this way relative to the grandchild, and of course, you didn't necessarily. Do something to put yourself in that environment per se where you're trying a new activity but yet you're still learning new things about yourself and I'd love to hear from you to take this back to kind of maybe a deeper level for people who haven't embraced newness in their life in quite some time. I think it occurs oftentimes because of fear. I purposely, a few years ago in my own life, I went skydiving. I'm deathly afraid of heights, but that's why I went skydiving because I didn't want to just live here. I wanted to do things that got me out of my comfort zone. So it's a long-winded question, but what I'm trying to understand, Gretchen, is from you, from your expertise, how might we as people listening today get ourselves out of a comfort zone more often where we don't allow the fear to stagnate us?
Fear comes from the unknown. So my thing is, okay, if you're like I said, you went skydiving because you had a fear of heights. Okay. So my thing is if there's something that you're afraid of, but you are curious about it, then the best way to do it is just go do it. Okay. Then you don't have to be afraid. You can say, okay, I'm never doing that again. And I've done things where I've said, okay, I'm never doing that again. Okay. But I don't fear it anymore. So my thing is that if you really want to not be fearful of something, then you need to go and experience it and just take out. You might still be fearful. Okay, I have all kinds of things that we've done that have scared the bejesus out of me. Okay, I mean, I wasn't really fond of traversing mountains with a D ring. Okay, that wasn't my favorite thing in the world to do, but I did it. And then afterwards, I said, okay, I can do that again. But I'm not afraid of it anymore. Do I want to do it 100,000 times? No, but I don't have that fear anymore. So it's that unknown thing. Everybody wants to. What if that all those, like I said, putting those ruminating thoughts. I always say this: don't say no to yourself first. Say yes to yourself. If you want to do it, don't give yourself 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't or can't. Just say, yes, I'm going to go do that and then figure it out. And that can be
Mhm.
enough to propel you having something to look forward to as well. I'm going to go
Mhm.
learn how, like this burro racing, okay, where you run with a donkey. It makes no sense at all, but I'm so infatuated with learning how to do this. And all kinds of things can go wrong. Your donkey can just sit down, decide he doesn't want to run anymore. Okay. But, and it sounds silly, the whole team investigating this or how we're going to go learn how to burro race. And all the money raised from this goes to burro sanctuaries. And something about burros I think is I like donkeys. Okay. So, I don't talk about, we're going to go do this. And they're all shaking their heads thinking, okay, that's what you want to do. We're going to go do it.
That's amazing. I know
Yeah.
nothing about. I'm gonna Google this after
Google it.
because
You'll
I just
see. It's a
yeah.
whole sport out west. It's like a real sport, and the donkeys are ranked. Like, you know, this donkey over here is known for running great races. This donkey over here, he's a hit and miss donkey. Sometimes he runs great, sometimes he doesn't. So it's you got to take all those things into consideration. And I just thought to myself, let's go do that.
Yes, yes. Oh, amazing. What a great way to cap off this wonderful conversation. Sergeant Major, I'm so grateful to you, thankful for your wisdom, your expertise, your vulnerability, and your authentic care that you provided to us today. I'm deeply moved. I already knew that I was going to be from our first conversation months ago. But again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you grateful, and we'll of course be staying in touch, and I'll follow up offline.
Absolutely.
There is
Thank you
one
for
more
having
comment.
me. It was fun.
My pleasure. Oh, it's truly my pleasure. There is one more comment. Looks like Carlos again commented. He said this was at 104, so I think he's already jumped, but he said, Sergeant Major, thank you for sharing your story and testimony with us. Thank you for paving the way for others to follow. May the Lord continue to bless you and protect you and guide you so that you may continue to be a beacon for others. I hate to leave, but I have another commitment at 1:15. So again, he doesn't look like he's on, but I'll just wanted to share that with you.
Okay, that's wonderful. All right. Thank you so much for having me. And everybody have a happy holiday season and stay safe.
Thank you. Likewise. Take
Thank you.
care.
All
Thank you,
right. Bye
everyone.
bye.